Okay, we are here today, Sarah and myself. Sarah, how are you doing?
I'm doing good, Scott. How are you?
I'm phenomenal. Thank you very much.
Great.
Sarah, I know that you are a Reels expert or connoisseur, at least, and I'm excited to be doing this episode with you today. I think there's so many salons out there that I've obviously been dabbling with Instagram Reels, but probably need a lot of advice and could use some tips, and hopefully we can bring them some interesting information today. What do you think?
Oh, for sure. And like you said in the intro, it's like Reels, they're a relatively new form of content, but like they are not going anywhere. They're still growing and thriving, and Instagram absolutely favors them in the algorithm. So I think it's super important to know some basics for salon owners because, again, you don't become a salon owner because you're a social media expert, right? So it's like just some basic do's and don'ts to create like good, crisp, interesting videos.
Yeah, and it's so critical. I mean, we're not here to explain why Reels are important. You better know that Reels are important and you need to be doing them. We're just going to provide you with some tips as to how to help, to do them in the best way possible, so that you can just at least get your little check marks done.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. So let's start off with some of our do's and don'ts today. You want to get us started with what the first thing that we should do is?
For sure. So this is the most simple, basic thing that you should be keeping in mind when you're creating reels is that you should be creating your reels with images and videos in portrait mode. So portrait mode is more visually appealing on reels and stories as there's no border and the image is in full view. Not only that, but it's the Instagram algorithm also favors videos that are easy to consume, easy to look at, everything like that. So the algorithm is actually going to favor video or reels created with portrait videos and photos.
Yeah, that makes sense. Now, hopefully everybody understands what portrait mode is kind of like the tall, thin images. And, sometimes we have the tendency, using our cameras because of traditional cameras in what's called landscape mode, right? Which is the more wide view, which is what you would, watch your TV on. But an obvious don't is you do not want to be using videos that you've taken in landscape mode and then trying to use them into a reel because it's not going to fit on the screen properly, and it's really just not going to maximize the visibility. And as Sarah just mentioned, Instagram is not going to favor it because it's not providing the best, essentially, viewer experience out there.
Exactly. Yeah, no, that makes total sense. So then the second thing for when creating your reels that you want to make sure that you're doing is using good lighting and that the photo quality is good. And if it's not, then you edit before if necessary. This kind of comes back to, again, like just creating a nice visual experience. You don't have to have all these crazy reels with edits and filters and effects that are going on, as long as your content that you're putting in the reel, so your photos and your videos, are good quality, not blurry, nothing like that.
What's the best suggestion that you have, Sarah, to get good lighting without, spending a fortune on professional lights or stuff like that?
So number one thing in this, use natural lighting. That is absolutely king in these situations. However, if you're doing like a nighttime, color or something where the lighting is just not hitting right, you can also invest in like a ring light or something like that. You can usually get them on Amazon for 100 150, and that's always a really good fixture to have in your salon as well, just for when the lighting isn't optimal.
Perfect. Okay, really important. So obviously, as if we look at the don't, is just be cautious to not use poorly lit videos or sort of blurry photos. Sometimes you'll incorporate photos into your reels, right? Because it might be sort of a flowing, almost like slideshow of images, which is totally a possible idea. But make sure that your photos are crisp quality. And there's just not any blur or sort of bad resolution. So just make sure when you're taking your pictures and videos that you're in the highest resolution mode on your phone. You don't need to be using fancy cameras to do this work. You can definitely use your smartphone, but make sure you're in the highest resolution because you do not want to have any blurry or kind of low res photos happening. It'll just really have an impact on the views and the engagement that you get with your reels.
And on top of that, like, I feel like this is a good rule of thumb for just all content that you're putting out as a hairstylist or a salon owner. I know editing photos, especially of hair, is a little bit of a, taboo thing. But if you're lightly editing to show the true color of it, I think that that is completely fine. So even if you're just adjusting the saturation or the contrast or a little bit of brightness, just to make sure that that color is actually shining through the way that it did in person, there's no problem with that. And that's going to perform far better than, a poorly lit or, half-ass picture kind of thing. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So
Cool.
then the next do is you always want to make sure that if you're adding music to your reel, that that music is coming from the Instagram library. This becomes a little bit complicated if you're a business account on, TikTok and stuff. Not that we're talking about TikTok, but Instagram in particular, if you're a business account, sometimes you'll only have access to certain music that is, not copyrighted or whatever it might be. So you want to make sure that you're adding that music from the Instagram library, because again, it's going to help, with your boost you in the algorithm and everything like that. And you're not going to have any, copyright issues or anything like that. So always be taking your music from the actual Instagram library.
Yeah, and I would just say don't use any music that you do not have permission to use. That could be a big no-no. So don't try to trick the system and sort of work around it by uploading an audio that you don't have permission to use, because Instagram may take your post down and potentially even block your account if you're doing it too often. So just be very cautious about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So another thing that you want to do with reels is you always want to share your reels to your feed. I know that aesthetically, again, like the reels are in a different format than your regular content. So sometimes it might not look as crisp on your feed, but if you're not posting it to your feed, you could be missing out on views. So it's just something that you always want to do, is adding your reels to your actual Instagram feed.
And how do you feel about adding the reels into your stories?
I think that that's a great, again, extra visibility after you post a reel, share it to your story, tag some people in it, maybe they'll reshare it. Yeah, there's no harm in extra visibility. So share it in as many places as you possibly can.
Totally agree, because if you don't, you're just missing out on potential eyeballs, right?
Yeah.
You're just trying to get as much exposure as possible. So, the don't is just you're missing out on a great opportunity. So post it to feed, stories, and you know what, you can tag people as well to get additional views.
Yes, absolutely. So this do kind of ties into the last one with sharing it to your feed. So if people aren't looking on the actual Reels feed on Instagram, they're only seeing it in the same format as content, which means that your reel is probably going to be cut off a bit at the top and at the bottom. So you do always want to make sure that you're keeping your captions or any type of font or anything like that you're writing, keep it in the middle of the page if possible. So you almost want to picture it as if people are seeing it in just regular Instagram content form, so that font or the captions or anything like that isn't getting cut off at the top or the bottom of the page, if that makes sense.
Totally makes sense. And full disclosure, this is one of my least favorite things about Instagram Reels, because when you're watching it, there's stuff all over the border, right? Like on the top, you have like the names. Down the side is where you have like the likes and the comments and whatnot. And then you have the caption sort of at the bottom and the audio information. So I find there's not a lot of space to actually put in, sort of images or words or, captions into your actual reel. And I do a lot of my personal ones like with my face. So it's like, I don't want to have, text
just over the face.
all over my face. So,
yeah.
I do find this is a challenge, but it's true that because if you're off center, this is where the don't go off center, because it means that it might be overlapping with other text, like the standard text that Instagram has, on the screen, and then the audience can't read it. It'll look a little unprofessional. So as much as you can, stay in the center, as you mentioned.
Totally. And then another do that you want to make sure that you're doing is always hashtag in the caption. I know hashtags are kind of one of those things that people are like, it's a thing of the past, but it absolutely is still a way, especially with Reels, to get more engagement, to get more reach, everything like that. So always use, it doesn't have to be a ton. You don't, long gone are the days of having to put, 100 hashtags in your posts. Pick 3 to 5 kind of niche down hashtags in your post to make sure that you're not missing out on that extra visibility that could come from hashtag searches.
For sure. So my don't skip out on using hashtags, because no hashtags means no discoverability. Will have no opportunity. And it's always, if you miss 100% of the shots that you don't take, right? So you might as well at least give yourself a chance.
Wayne Gretzky, Michael Scott, right?
Michael Jordan.
Oh gosh. So another thing that you want to keep in mind with reels is you do want to keep them short and easy to digest. Think of yourself as, like a consumer of anything. Like if you're scrolling on Instagram reels or anything, the second that there is a video that is longer than, a minute, even if it is fascinating, half the time I'm scrolling through it. So especially for salons, unless you have a really solid message that you're needing to portray over kind of more of a long form video, try and keep your videos short and easy to digest so that your clients and your followers are actually watching them the full way through.
Yeah. I mean, you don't want to waste your limited time that you have working on, long, complicated reels that the audience might not even watch fully anyways, right? Yeah. So it's kind of like a work smarter, not harder approach. And the reality is that people are more drawn to quick, catchy videos. So if you can do them in, 10, 15, 20 seconds, and get your message across, it's actually going to be easier for you and more likely to be viewed by others. One other thing in the algorithm today that works is if people rewatch the video several times, it actually really helps to boost the potential visibility of it. So by having a really short, catchy thing, some people are going to actually want to watch it several times because it was only, 10 seconds or whatever the case may be. And that really helps, as opposed to, a 60-second version that, people might get bored of, because unfortunately the attention spans are so short right now.
Yes, exactly. No, that makes sense for sure. So one last thing that you want to do with reels is after you post a reel, give it some time to perform and do its thing, but look at the insights. I don't think people realize how many, especially on a business account, how many insights you can actually have into each individual post, as well as your entire page as a whole. But you can look at the insights on your reel to see how many people engaged in it, how many people it reached, all of these different things. So I highly recommend checking that out after you post a reel, just to see what performs well and what doesn't, and scrap what doesn't and focus on what does, right? So look at the insights on your reels.
100%. And I always say, don't measure only by the views, right? Some people are just looking at, I got this many views. But you really want to dig deeper. And like you said, there's so many available things in the insights, and really the engagement ultimately is, the critical one, because that's taking potential clients a little bit further down that funnel of being interested in you and potentially converting them into eventual customers. So don't measure only by the views, dig deeper into those insights.
Yep, for sure.
Cool. Sarah, do you want to close us off here? We've got that's been a great little list. Hopefully our listeners have gotten a couple of key tips that maybe they weren't thinking about or weren't utilizing yet. How should we wrap them up today?
I think the biggest thing with reels, the biggest do and the biggest don't, is the best thing you can do is start creating, and the worst thing, and just don't hesitate to get started, kind of thing. So it's intimidating, and there is a lot to keep in mind, obviously. But again, the worst thing that you can do is just not do it. So get started and get recording, and you might have a couple of flops. Again, that's where those insights are for, so that you know how to correct your method and everything like that. But yeah, the best thing you can do is just start recording and start creating.
Love it. We also did a previous podcast episode with Michael Cole all about Reels and Instagram Reels, and got some really great insights. So if you haven't listened to it yet, we would encourage you to go check that out. We'd also encourage you to, share this episode with someone that that maybe is having a little bit difficulty getting started with Reels, this would be a great tool for them. So please feel free to share this with others in the industry so that we can kind of help people get better at short form video. So important. Sarah, thanks for your insights, and everybody enjoy. We'll catch you on our next episode.